bone density, which means the patient has osteoporosis. With osteoporosis, bone cells don't make enough new bone to make up for the loss of old bone. The bone becomes porous, and the risk of fractures increases. To prevent fractures, patients need osteoporosis medication and vitamin D. It's a standard part of treatment for bone loss. But how much vitamin D should healthy people take to prevent osteoporosis? The guideline recommends 800 units per day. 2,000 to 4,000 units a day is a high dose. 4,000 is the upper limit. Most people do well with around 1,000 units a day. A low dose like that is safe to take without checking your vitamin D levels first. Doctors advise against high-dose supplements, as they can cause toxicity. You can develop gastrointestinal issues, nausea, stomach or digestive problems. You might lose your appetite. And medically, the bigger concern is that calcium levels can be affected and the kidneys may stop working properly. Without medical supervision, experts recommend only taking low-dose supplements. And it's just as important to spend plenty of time outside and get some sun. It protects your bones, boosts your immune system, and lifts your mood.
Another important nutrient for healthy bones is magnesium. It also helps with energy metabolism and the transmission of signals from nerves to muscles. Sources of magnesium include legumes, green leafy vegetables, fish and seafood, even dark chocolate and espresso. So how much magnesium do you need? Studies haven't pinned down a definitive answer, but still many people take supplements, especially athletes.
It's 30 degrees Celsius, but they're going full throttle. In their free time, Lisa Schmidt and Anne-Katrine Abt hit the tennis court to train, because weekends mean league matches, which push their leg muscles to the limit. To keep muscle cramps at bay, both rely on magnesium before and during games. Anne-Katrine takes it in tablet form, while Lisa eats bananas, which contain about 27 milligrams of magnesium per 100 grams. I hope it stops my muscles getting tired or cramping up, just helps me stay fitter. I hope it helps my muscles relax, and that I won't be quite as sore as I normally would be the next day. But can magnesium really prevent muscle cramps, or at least stave them off, as it's often claimed? That's what Christoph Skutschik and Michael Behringer want to find out. So far, the scientific data for magnesium is pretty underwhelming. The evidence that magnesium helps is actually really thin. There's hardly any solid scientific backing for it, and most of the supposed benefits are anecdotal. There's a great review that's updated regularly, and it shows that magnesium might help pregnant women, but beyond that, the evidence is generally quite weak. What we do know is that muscle performance is connected to electrolyte levels, including magnesium. But those levels don't seem to be the deciding factor when it comes to muscle cramps. This was shown, among other things, in studies with ultramarathon runners. The main triggers for cramps are now believed to be muscular fatigue from overexertion or lack of training, tight, contracted muscles, and high temperatures. So if magnesium isn't the issue, how do you prevent muscle cramps? That's the speciality of Ursula Manunzio, an expert in sports and nutritional medicine. She advises both professional and recreational athletes. I look at diet, hydration, and any orthopedic issues or muscular imbalances. She works as part of a team alongside sports orthopedists and physiotherapists. Today, Andreas Turesson is here for his second appointment. The 35-year-old is a professional ice hockey player in Cologne. Following a calf injury, he's been experiencing more muscle cramps.
I had a little bit before in my calf, and after I got my injury, I started to get more and more cramps, especially like when I wake up in the morning and after some hard physical activities. And yeah, now I want to get to the root of the problem and try to see what I can do to help it.
You had this injury?
As well as assessing his training level and muscle condition, the team will also analyse his diet. For the next few weeks, he'll document exactly what and when he eats. Magnesium may not play a decisive role in preventing cramps, but deficiencies in other electrolytes often do, especially sodium and potassium.
We decided to
Potassium is an electrolyte involved in almost all bodily processes, and it's incredibly important for performance. A lack of sodium doesn't just potentially cause muscle cramps, it can even lead to heart rhythm disturbances.
How much are you eating?
But you don't need supplements for these electrolytes, not even as a professional athlete.
Is it? And how long? Because sometimes
What really matters is a balanced diet and enough fluids,
we will talk about it. Maybe
tailored to the level of physical activity.
That can be.
You should eat something small before training, like a banana or muesli. And during training, you should drink regularly, and I wouldn't recommend just water. Her tip for heavy exertion is apple juice with soda water and a pinch of salt, instead of magnesium tablets. A few sips every 15 minutes. It provides carbohydrates, potassium and sodium. For snacks, carbohydrate-rich foods like bananas and apricots. Salted nuts offer a good source of energy and salt. For a long time, scientists believed that cramps occurred because muscles weren't getting enough nutrients. But we now know that cramps are primarily a neural issue. Muscle activity is controlled by nerve cells in the spinal cord known as alpha motor neurons. They regulate how active our muscles are. If these alpha motor neurons become hyperexcited during exercise, a muscle cramp occurs. They send too many signals to the muscle, which happens especially when muscles are fatigued. So if we understand that this imbalance plays a role, especially when muscle fatigue increases and the muscle is in a tight, contracted position, then we should really try to address those factors. Training to improve resistance to fatigue might actually be a better therapeutic approach. For Ann-Kathrin Abt and Lisa Schmidt to avoid cramps during long, hot match days, they'd need to train more intensively during the week. And if a cramp does hit, there's an unusual home remedy to calm those motor neurons: pickle juice. An American researcher discovered it by accident. Drinking or even gargling the acidic pickle brine activates specific receptors in the mouth and throat. Early studies suggest these receptors dampen the activity signals from the motor neurons to the cramping muscle. The hyperexcitation is reduced and the cramp stops.
The effect
seems to kick in with about 1 to 2 minutes, so it has a direct, immediate impact on stopping the cramp. It's enough to drink about 1 milliliter of pickle juice per kilogram of body weight. Lisa and Ann-Kathrin plan to ditch the extra magnesium from now on. And if a muscle cramp does strike, they're willing to give pickle juice a try.
Experts agree. Most people don't need vitamin supplements. A large study of almost 400,000 adults over a period of 20 years found no link between taking daily multivitamins and increased longevity. There are exceptions: pregnant women, older people, those with metabolic disorders, and vegans. But deficiencies should be confirmed by a doctor, for example, for vitamin B12.
Vitamin B12 is essential. It keeps our cells' energy metabolism running smoothly. The body needs it to activate genes, produce blood, and support cell division. B12 is also crucial for building and maturing nerve cells, helping them repair and regenerate. When there's not enough B12, the nerves start to suffer. First the protective covering, then slowly the inner parts, eventually damaging entire nerve pathways. The consequences can be serious. The classic signs are mostly sensory disturbances, tingling, numbness in the hands or feet, but also problems with concentration, performance, cognitive difficulties, fatigue, and even instability when walking. Renate Prahl is one of the people most at risk for a vitamin B12 deficiency. Firstly, because of her age, as she's over 60. And secondly, she doesn't eat meat. That puts her at an even higher risk of developing a B12 deficiency, according to experts. The body can't produce vitamin B12 on its own. Most people meet their needs by eating fish, eggs, dairy, and meat. Older people are more affected because their bodies absorb B12 less efficiently in the digestive tract. And sometimes it's poor nutrition, they're just not consuming enough. Hairdresser Jennifer Heinz also had a vitamin B12 deficiency, even though she eats meat and is only 41. She regularly experienced numbness in her hands and feet, along with increasing nervousness. My limbs were always falling asleep, and I get in a muddle sometimes. Like in the mornings, I'd feel foggy and have to get myself together. That's not normal for me, because I'm usually very together. I'd forget things and I felt tired, even though I'm usually never tired. The doctor examined Jennifer and found that she had a severe vitamin B12 deficiency. It was thought to be caused by an autoimmune reaction. Dr. Knopp checked whether the deficiency had already damaged her nerves. Fortunately, her nerve pathways were intact. An MRI also showed that her spinal cord hadn't been damaged. To keep it that way, she needs to closely monitor her B12 metabolism. The treatment is simple: vitamin B12 tablets or injections. For Jennifer Heinz, it's weekly injections. Her unique metabolism means her body needs a lot of B12. The treatment worked quickly. I feel fit, clear-headed, everything's fine. No more tingling, no crawling ants feeling, nothing. It's great.
Super.
If you eat a varied diet that includes plenty of vegetables, you'll get all the vitamins and minerals you need. Getting your vitamins this way also gives your body lots of other important nutrients that aren't found in pills. Even for kids, vitamin supplements are unnecessary. And with candies and gummy vitamins, it's easy to eat too many of them, which can be risky. Getting kids to eat veggies? Not an easy task, but not impossible either.
Mike Stein is a chef. To help get children excited about healthy eating, he cooks with them on a regular basis. What do you really not like? Vegetables that are kind of mushy? Definitely not broccoli. And not spinach either. Parsnip. Oh yeah, parsnip is yuck. I don't like cauliflower soup. Today's dish is ratatouille, lots of vegetables.
Welcome
to the Slowmobile. I'm Mike.
Dann haben wir hier schon mal so das
And here we've got the
Grundgemüse.
basic veggies.
Ratatouille
Ratatouille is mostly made of
vorwiegend
peppers,
aus
zucchini
Paprika,
and aubergine.
Zucchini und Aubergine.
Mike has a tip to make sure you're getting all the vitamins you need.
Ich versuche immer drauf zu achten.
I always try to make sure I eat 5 colours a day.
Könnt ihr die
Can
Farben
you count the
zählen? Was haben wir
colours?
hier?
What do we
Rot,
have
gelb,
here? Red, yellow,
lila,
purple,
grün.
green, garlic is white.
Knoblauch ist weiß.
That's 5, right?
Sind 5, oder?
Green usually means iron and folic acid. Yellow indicates carotenoids, and red contains lycopene. Definitely better than sweets or chips. The German Society of Pediatrics and Adolescent Medicine says the biggest problem is highly processed foods.
Wir müssen natürlich auch bedenken,
We also
dass
have
diese
to remember that these highly
hochkonzentrierten
processed
Lebensmittel
foods
dann
are very
auch sehr
energy
energiereich
dense, which
sind
increases the
und
risk of
dann eben auch
obesity.
ein Adipositas-Risiko haben.
They often contain flavourings and taste enhancers, and that mix of too much salt and too much sugar means you end up feeling hungry again much sooner.
Convenience ist für keinen gut.
Convenience
Ich denke,
food
es ist
isn't
wichtig,
good for anyone.
sich Zeit zu nehmen,
I think it's
frisches
important to
Essen
take the time to
zuzubereiten.
cook fresh food.
Das macht
It
einfach
makes a
einen
huge
Riesenunterschied,
difference in
geschmacklich
taste and for your
und
health.
für die Gesundheit.
The vegetables are added to the pan one after another, and so far no one has complained about the aubergine or zucchini. Rosemary, thyme and garlic give it an extra flavour boost. Cooking together is clearly a lot of fun, but what about eating the vegetables, especially the ones the kids don't usually like?
So, wollt ihr schon mal einen Klecks Polenta unten drauf tun? Es ist unfair zu sagen,
It's not
dass
fair
Kinder
to
keine
say kids
Ahnung
don't
haben.
know
Das stimmt
anything.
nicht ganz. Sie wissen ja, wenn
They
irgendwas
know
gut
when
schmeckt.
something tastes
Aber
good,
manchmal
but
muss man
sometimes
Sachen
you just
halt
have to
auch
try
mehrmals
things a
probieren,
few times
bevor
before
man
you start to
den
like
Gefallen
them.
dran findet.
Children also taste many things much more intensely than adults do. Some vegetables really do taste quite bitter to them. But taste changes over time, so it's worth letting them try things again and again. Children can have 3 main meals plus 2 small snacks a day. A sweet fruit smoothie, for example, is perfect for that. And how was it?
If you thought this show was super, then write to us and send in your questions. Maybe your topic will make it onto an upcoming episode. Now, wouldn't that be super? See you next time. Bye for now.
In Nigeria, and today we are all set.
And we're watching closely
We are all in.
to bring you the story behind the news.
We are all about unbiased information
for free minds.
So do tune in.
Hong Kong Open.
Done.
DW on your smart TV.
You are at the right place.
Looking for more than just entertainment? Interested in a vibrant mix from business to science to culture? Then join us. Together we see.
मुझे अल्लाह पे बहुत ज़्यादा उम्मीद है इंशाल्लाह मेरा भाई वापस आएगा
Currently, more people than ever are on the move worldwide in search of a better life.
ਉਹਨੇ ਬਸ ਇਹ ਸੋਚਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਹਾਲਾਤ ਠੀਕ ਹੋ ਜਾਣ ਇਹ ਸੋਚਦਾ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਹਾਲਾਤ ਠੀਕ ਕਰਨੇ ਹੁਣ ਤੇ ਘਰ ਰਹਿ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਪੁੱਠੇ ਰਸਤੇ ਨਾ ਜਾ ਤੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਮੰਨਦਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ
Find out about Rubina's story. Info Migrants. Reliable news for migrants, wherever they may be. Time contains the story. Come watch it unfold. Discover the world as it was.
It's essential to recognize that NATO was created in the aftermath of the Second World War.
It's necessary to show these things because how else are we going to know how these things happen?
Discover the world as it is.
I cannot believe someone spent 5 years in such a tiny cell.
For the first time, I can feel we are free. We can stay in our country, build our own future with our own hands.
Discover the world as it will be. Discover the world around you with us.
I'm Brent Goff. Welcome to our viewers joining us via live stream on YouTube. You're watching DW News, and this is our special coverage of the Munich Security Conference, which begins amid transatlantic tensions and a thick haze of uncertainty as 8 decades of established rules and norms are being cast aside. Now, we just heard an opening speech from the conference chairman and the former German ambassador to the U.S., Wolfgang Ischinger. He called for a transatlantic reset, asking, are we willing to have one? And we're expecting the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to start his speech in just a few minutes from now. No doubt, many in Munich are asking themselves this year, is the United States still Europe's most important ally? Is Washington a reliable partner? Are we still friends? Lots of questions to be answered today and to talk about. And to do that, I'm joined here in the studio now by our political correspondent, Matthew Moore. He's to my right here. He'll be offering analysis of what we are going to be hearing today. Matthew, good to have you with us. And our chief political correspondent, Michaela Kuffner. She is at the conference for us in Munich. There she is. Michaela, let me ask you. I just want to get your reaction to what we just heard from Wolfgang Ischinger, calling for a transatlantic reset. Are we going to get one?
Well, that's an open historic question, but what I understand we will definitely get from the German Chancellor, who's going to open this conference, is essentially that kind of message, that something has come to an end, and the question how to start something new, how to reconnect. So we expect him to flesh that out. He wants to speak about Europe, about freedom, and Wolfgang Ischinger, of course, is very much in the loop on the discussions, not just in the German government, but throughout the European Union. When he says something like that, we will get something new. We've done this a lot of times, Brent, haven't we? We've spoken here from the Munich Security Conference. The doubts over the transatlantic relationship in NATO aren't anything new. But what is new is that nobody dares to speak about any kind of wake-up call anymore, because that's over. Everybody's wide awake. Europe is wide awake here at this conference and looking at how to take those next steps with or without the US, although always on the understanding that security-wise, the European continent is completely dependent on America.
And you said it, Michaela, we've done this many times. 1 year ago, it was the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance who was there in Munich. His speech blew up transatlantic relations as we know them. And now we've got the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. He'll be the star speaker tomorrow. What are we expecting him to do? I mean, is he going to, bring a blowtorch with him, or does he have a fire extinguisher hidden somewhere?
Well, I guess that also depends on how much of that speech he will have written himself. He's seen as a moderate. He's also seen as someone who could potentially become the next presidential candidate for the Republicans. But he is speaking for Donald Trump, and he will be delivering his message and only his message alone. Nothing will ever shock this Munich Security Conference as deeply as that last speech did by J.D. Vance last year, particularly in transatlantic terms. But we've moved on. There's more trauma that came after that. Greenland, of course, and Greenland really became a turning point where everybody started to rethink on how to work, not just with this Trump America, but around, without, with new partners. And there's a lot of debate here going on in the corridors on what that will look like, because everybody expects exactly that to happen in the near future.
And we just want to let our viewers know, if you're joining us on YouTube right now, we are waiting for the German Chancellor to deliver the opening speech at the Munich Security Council. We're expecting that speech to start any moment now. Michaela, ahead of this conference, a report on the state of the global order was released, in which the U.S. was likened to a wrecking ball, knocking down, I think the report said, 80 years of rules and institutions and alliances that have framed the world as we know it. The German Chancellor, I'm sure he will have read that report. Is he going to add his weight to the wrecking ball, or is he going to say that was maybe we went a little too far? I mean, he's been reluctant to criticize Trump and his foreign policy.
He will map out what he considers to be the most important European consequences out of that. He's already been on the record in the past speaking of a suspension of the rules-based order as we know it in a newspaper interview, and we expect him to now flesh out how Europe, that still stands for that very order, will now want to proceed, both in terms of its relationship with the United States. There will be a bit of an offer in there, but I think that he will have given up on placing any kind of demands or trying to hold the Americans who used to guarantee that international order to that very word of international law. There is a sense that that's being given up. The question is how international law can be upheld in other groups, in groups of the willing, as we've also seen in supporting Ukraine, which no longer necessarily fit with the established European Union transatlantic brackets that we've seen in the past. These are all coalitions of the willing, and I expect to hear very loudly that the Europeans are still willing to stand up for that, and that the German Chancellor wants to take a lead in that.
The German Chancellor is coming up on the stage. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Sehr geehrter lieber Wolfgang Ischinger, lieber Markus Söder, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen aus den Regierungen, aus den Parlamenten, Exzellenzen, sehr verehrte liebe Gäste, meine Damen und Herren.
Ladies and gentlemen,
ich komme mit einigen Unterbrechungen.
With only a few interruptions, I've attended the Munich Security Conference for more than 30 years.
Die Münchner Sicherheitskonferenz
The Munich Security Conference has always been a seismograph for the political situation. In the early years, a seismograph for the relations between the United States and Europe. For many years, it's been a seismograph for the political state of the entire world. In the early years, I came here mainly to foster the relations with our American friends, but also to meet new actors in foreign and security policy from many parts of the world. For several years, also here in this room, we've had an atmosphere marked by increasing tensions and conflicts in the world. And at the latest, with the beginning of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine 4 years ago, we have entered a new phase of open conflicts and wars that make us hold our breath and that change our world more comprehensively than we in this room would have thought possible for many years before. Against this backdrop, Wolfgang Ischinger, it was important to me to open this conference today because we need to talk. This is more urgent than ever. Before we do that, allow me to thank Wolfgang Ischinger on behalf of the federal government for heading this conference once again this year. I may say this that way, Wolfgang. Thank you very much for your great work, especially in this year.
Über dieser Konferenz steht ein düsteres Motto.
You've chosen a grim motto for this conference, under destruction. And it probably means that the international order based on rights and rules is currently being destroyed. But I'm afraid we have to put it in even harsher terms. This order, as flawed as it has been even in its heyday, no longer exists.
Und wir, Europa?
And we, Europe?
Peter
Well, Peter Sloterdijk wrote a few weeks ago that Europe had just returned from a vacation from world history.
Wir haben gemeinsam die Schwelle
Together, we've entered an era that, once again, is marked by power and big power politics very openly. First of all, we see Russia's violent revisionism, its brutal war against Ukraine, against our political order, with daily cruel war crimes. But this is only the shrillest expression we see on a daily basis. We see other developments in the world as well that are different to what we in this room would have expected or discussed in the years before. China wants to be a leader in shaping the world, and it has paved the ground for that over many years with strategic patience. In the foreseeable future, Beijing could be on an equal footing with the United States in military terms. China systematically uses dependencies of others, and it redefines the international order in its own favor. If there had been a unipolar moment after the fall of the Berlin Wall, a unipolar moment in history, it has long passed. The United States' claim to leadership has been challenged and possibly lost. The return to power politics, however, is not only rooted in the rivalry between great powers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is also a reflection of restless, agitated societies in times of revolutionary changes. It is an expression of a wish, also in many democratic states, a wish for strong leadership in a globalized world, in which especially democratic states are coming very close to the limits of their ability to act. Big power politics, it seems, gives strong and easy answers, at least to the big players, and at least at a first glance. With disillusion, big power politics turns away from a world in which increasing connectivity translates into the rule of law and peaceful relations between states. Big power politics has its own rules. It is fast, harsh, and often unpredictable. It fears own dependencies, but uses dependencies of others, and if necessary, even exploits them. At the heart of this stands a battle for spheres of influence, dependencies, and deference. Natural resources, technologies, and supply chains are becoming bargaining tools in the zero-sum game of the major powers. This is a dangerous game. At first, for the small players, but later on, probably also for the big players. And our friends in the United States are adapting to this at a fast pace. They have realized their own need to catch up in some areas with China, and they are drawing radical consequences in their national security strategy. They do that in their own way that does not slow down this trend, but rather accelerates it. And we, the Europeans too, are preparing for this new era. And we reached different conclusions than, for example, the administration in Washington. Our prime task as Europeans, and of course as Germans too, is to accept this new reality today. It does not mean that we accept it as an inevitable fate. We are not at the mercy of this world. We can shape it. And I have no doubt that we will preserve our interests and our values in this world if we step up together with determination, with confidence in our own strengths. This way we will weather the storm and preserve our freedom. We will push open new doors, we will seize new opportunities, and if we get it right, we will emerge even stronger from this testing time. Ladies and gentlemen, in a very sober manner, we should firstly focus on our objectives and our possibilities. The major objectives of German foreign and security policy derive from our basic law, our history, and our geography. Above everything stands our freedom. Our security makes this freedom possible. Our economic power serves this freedom. Our basic law, our history, and our geography mandate us to always think our goals in a European dimension. This focus is in our own vested interest. It opens up, only this way, it opens up the best opportunities for our country. Especially, particularly German foreign and security policy is anchored in a European perspective, and this Europe is more precious than ever. The way we approach our goals is something that we adjust today to the possibilities that we have. And let me be very frank here. Compared to its power instruments, German foreign policy of the last decades had, if I may put it that way, a normative surplus. With the best intentions, it criticized violations of the international order all over the world. It has often admonished, demanded, and scolded. But it was not worried enough about the fact that it often lacked the means to solve the problem. This gap between ambition and possibility had grown too wide. We are closing it now. And this way, we will be in a better position to face reality. So let's be honest about our own possibilities. And one striking example is Russia's GDP is currently about 2 trillion euros. That of the European Union is almost 10 times as high. But still, Europe is not 10 times as strong as Russia today. Our military, political, economic and technological potential is huge, but we haven't tapped it to the necessary extent for a very long time. So the most important thing is to turn the switch in our minds now. We have understood that in the era of big powers, our freedom is no longer a given. It is at stake. We will need to show firmness and determination to assert this freedom. This will require our willingness to engage in new beginnings, in change, and yes, also make sacrifices. Not just someday, but right now. And it is for very good reasons that we have our difficulties in Germany with state power. Since 1945, it has been deeply enshrined in our thinking that we need to rein in this power. And let me add, it is not just too much state power that destroys the foundation of our freedom. Too little state power will lead you to a different path, but to the same result. And this question has a very much European dimension. Already 15 years ago, Radek Sikorski told us Germans, "I fear German power less than German inactivity." This, too, is part of our responsibility that arises from our basic law, our history, and our geography. We assume this responsibility. And we need a strategy for that, to solve an obvious dilemma. The restructuring of the world by the big powers is happening faster and more comprehensively than we can strengthen ourselves. So I'm not convinced, because sometimes people automatically demand Europe to just write off the US as a partner. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand the uneasiness and the doubts that lead to such claims, and I share some of them. But still, these claims have not been fully thought through. They ignore hard geopolitical realities in Europe. And they underestimate the potential that our partnership with the US continues to have, despite all the difficulties that exist. It will not suffice to simply give smart reactions to the maneuvers and moods of the great powers rhetorically. So, in these challenging times, we are creating our own agenda. We are focusing on ourselves. This agenda is gradually being developed, and how could it be otherwise? But still, we're implementing it at full speed. We use the pressure under which we've come to create something new, something hopefully good. Big power politics in Europe, however, is not an option for Germany. Leadership in partnership, yes. Hegemonial fantasies, no. Never again will we Germans go it alone. This is the enduring lesson we've learned from our history. We assert our freedom with our neighbors, only with our neighbors and our allies and our partners. We build on our strength, our sovereignty, and our ability to show mutual solidarity in Europe. We do this with realism based on our principles. Friends, if I may say so, ladies and gentlemen, this program of freedom consists of 4 points. Firstly, we are strengthening ourselves, in military terms, political terms, economical terms, and with technologies. We are reducing our dependencies and vulnerabilities. Our highest priority for us is to strengthen Europe within NATO. We are making massive investments in credible deterrence. And just a reminder, Germany changed its constitution. At the NATO summit in The Hague last June, all allies, almost all allies, committed themselves to spend 5% of their GDP on security. Germany alone will invest hundreds of billions of euros over the coming years. We support Ukraine in its brave resistance against the Russian imperialism in military, in diplomatic, political, economic terms, and also in military terms. And by the way, for a year, Germany and Europe have assumed the most important leading role. We have imposed unheard of losses and costs on Moscow. And if Moscow finally agrees to make peace, it will also be for that reason, because this is an expression of European self-assertion. We have launched big conventional procurement projects in the field of air defense, deep precision strikes, and satellite technology. We are reviving our defense industry. New factories are opening, new jobs are being created, new technologies are emerging. The Bavarian state premier said it. Here in Munich, a cluster of highly innovative defense tech companies is booming, developing disruptive technologies, partly in close cooperation with Ukraine. The Minister of Defense started the reform of our military service, and if necessary, we will adjust it further. We are strengthening NATO's eastern flank. This is symbolized by our brigade in Lithuania, the first time in the history of the Bundeswehr that a brigade is deployed outside our own territory. We will do more for securing the High North. The first German Eurofighters have been earmarked, and more is to follow. I often said that, and I will repeat it today. We will make the Bundeswehr the strongest conventional army in Europe as soon as we can, an army that stands firm when it has to. At the same time, we are making our society and our economy more resilient. We have initiated new legislation to make our grids and critical infrastructure resilient to hybrid attacks. We are forging resilient supply chains and reducing unilateral dependencies on raw materials, key technologies, and key products. We protect our free democratic order against internal and external enemies, and among other things, we will also strengthen our intelligence services. In this new world, competitiveness policy is security policy, and security policy is competitiveness policy. Both serve our freedom. This is why we want to be drivers of progress in the technologies of the future. AI will play a key role in this. Secondly, we are strengthening Europe. A sovereign Europe is our best answer to this new era. Uniting Europe and strengthening Europe is our prime task today. Our Europe needs to focus on what's essential, that is, preserving and enhancing our freedom, our security, and our competitiveness. We need to cap the explosion of European bureaucracy and regulation. European standards must not put us in chains that rob us of our competitiveness. They need to highlight our strengths. They need to fuel innovation and entrepreneurship, encourage investment, and reward creativity. Europe must not just withdraw to avoiding risks. It needs to open up new opportunities and unleash a new sense of agency. Ursula von der Leyen, we discussed these questions today with the European heads of state and government, and we are developing a new roadmap for a strong, sovereign Europe. Europe needs to become a real player in global politics with its own security policy strategy. And by the way, just to remind you, maybe some people don't know it, Article 42 of the Treaty on European Union, we commit ourselves to provide mutual assistance in case of an armed attack in Europe. So we need to spell out now how we want to organize this at the European level, not to replace NATO, but as a self-sustained, strong pillar within the alliance. I have started first talks with the French President Emmanuel Macron about European nuclear deterrence. And ladies and gentlemen, to be clear, we absolutely stick to our legal obligations. This will be fully embedded in our nuclear sharing within NATO, and we will not have zones of different security levels in Europe. And the European defense industry, it finally needs to show its mettle. Three big S's: standardization, scaling, and simplification of weapon systems will have to be organized in a European framework. We are tapping a huge potential by doing so. And we are translating this power into a joint external positioning that gains us new partners. Part of this is a strong trade policy. The EU-Mercosur agreement will be provisionally applied. Yes, this is the right decision taken by the EU Commission. The free trade agreement with India has been fully negotiated, and we will and have to have additional agreements. Diplomatically, we in Europe are truly squaring the circle these days. It is reflected also in our work for peace in Ukraine. When we need to be agile, we make progress in small groups with the E3, that is Germany, France, and the UK, but also with Italy and Poland as big European players. We know In the long run, we will only be successful if we take the other Europeans on board, and we're doing that. For us Germans, there's no way around it. We are at the heart of Europe. If Europe is torn apart, we are torn apart. Germany is torn apart. But I would also like to appeal to our partners. Please realize the impact of the moment, and please also engage in a path towards a strong, sovereign Europe. And thirdly, we want to forge a new transatlantic partnership. And let me start with the inconvenient truth right from the start. A divide has opened up between Europe and the United States, and Vice President J.D. Vance said this very openly here at the Munich Security Conference a year ago, and he was right. The battle of cultures of MAGA in the US is not ours. Freedom of speech here ends where the words spoken are directed against human dignity and our basic law. We do not believe in tariffs and protectionism, but in free trade. We stick to climate agreements and the World Health Organization because we are convinced. Because we're convinced that global challenges can only be solved together. Now, the transatlantic partnership is no longer something we can just take for granted. First, it started in the United States, then here in Europe, but probably also here in this room. Ladies and gentlemen, if our partner is to have a future, we need to forge it and reason it in a new way. This reasoning must be hands-on and not esoteric. We need to realize on both sides of the Atlantic that we are stronger together. We Europeans know how precious the trust is on which NATO was founded. In an age of superpowers, also the US will rely on this trust. Even the US is reaching the limits of its own power if it goes it alone. The strategists at the Pentagon are very aware of this. NATO is not just our, but also, dear American friends, your competitive advantage.
Let me paraphrase this for our American friends in English. For 3 generations, trust amongst allies, partners and friends has made NATO the strongest alliance of all times. Europe knows deeply how precious this is. In the era of great power rivalry, even the United States will not be powerful enough to go it alone. Dear friends, being a part of NATO is not only Europe's competitive advantage, it's also the United States' competitive advantage. So let's repair and revive transatlantic trust together. We, the Europeans, we are doing our part.
And I would like to say a few words about what Wolfgang Ischinger said before. Autocracies may have loyal followers, but democracies have partners and allies. And this sentence is also relevant for us Europeans. A true ally takes his obligation seriously. No one forced us into this excessive dependency on the United States, in which we have found ourselves recently. This dependence was self-inflicted, but we now cast off this state as soon as we can. And we are doing this not by writing off NATO. We're doing it by establishing a strong, self-sustained European pillar within the alliance. It's in our own interest. And ladies and gentlemen, this approach is absolutely right. It is right if the United States further alienates itself. It is right as long as we cannot guarantee our security by ourselves. And it is also right in order to forge a healthier transatlantic partnership. I suppose that we may have differing opinions more often than in the past. We will negotiate about the right way forward and maybe have to argue about it. But if we do this with new strength, new respect and self-respect, it will be to the benefit of both sides. And by the way, I could feel something of this spirit in the talks we had about Greenland over the recent weeks. And Mette Frederiksen, the Danish Prime Minister, can confirm this. She knows that she can rely on European solidarity. There is no limitation to that. Fourthly, and last but not least, we are forging a strong network of global partnerships. As important as European integration and the transatlantic partnership remain for us, they will no longer be sufficient to preserve our freedom. Partnership is not an absolute term here. It doesn't require full convergence of all values and interests. This is one of the lessons we've learned these days, by the way. These days and weeks and months. So we reach out to new partners with whom we share not all, but many objectives. This avoids dependencies and risks, and at the same time it opens up new opportunities for both sides. It protects our freedom. Canada and Japan, Turkey, India or Brazil will play a key role in this, as do South Africa, the Gulf states and others. We want to work more closely together with these states on the basis of mutual respect and with stamina and determination. We share the fundamental interest in a political order in which we can rely on agreements made, in which we are able to solve global problems together, and in which we, first and foremost, resolve conflicts peacefully together. We share the experience that the international law and international organizations serve our sovereignty, our independence, and particularly our freedom. We Germans know a world in which might makes right would be a dark place. Our country has gone down this path in the 20th century until the bitter and dreadful end. Today, we embark on a different, a better path. Our biggest strength remains the ability to forge partnerships, alliances, and organizations based on the law and on rules anchored in respect and trust, and that believe in the power of freedom. After 1945, it was mostly the United States, our friends in the United States, that sparked our enthusiasm for this bright idea here in Germany. We will never forget that. On this foundation, NATO became the strongest political alliance in history. We remain faithful to this idea, with all our power and passion, with decency and solidarity, with creativity and courage. We carry this idea into this new age for a future that is not dark, ladies and gentlemen, but bright, a great time for us, but especially for the generations of our children and grandchildren, who rely on us in these weeks and months to do the right thing. And we are determined to do that.
And if you're just joining us, that was the German Chancellor there delivering the opening speech at the Munich Security Council, of the Munich Security Conference, calling for a reset of transatlantic relations. There's going to be Q&A now with Wolfgang Ischinger, the head of the Munich Security Conference. Let's listen in.
We have only a few minutes for just a couple of questions, and I will use my role here to throw the first question at you. I'd like to ask a question about our relationship with Russia. The discussions which are currently being conducted with Russia about the future of Ukraine are being conducted essentially exclusively by our American friends. Your colleague Emmanuel Macron has recently expressed himself in favor of a direct European channel of communications with the Kremlin. You have expressed, if I can put it that way, doubts about the usefulness of that. But isn't it, when we think and talk about European sovereignty, isn't it something that we should somehow try to manage better and not leave this only to our American friends? Give us your views.
Wolfgang, many thanks for this important question. And this is a question we ask ourselves almost every week and every month. My first remark is that we are closely linked to those who are talking with the Russian side, be it the United States of America or be it Ukraine itself. We are well coordinated, and there is nothing which is not negotiated, at least talked about with both sides before. My second remark is the following. There was somebody from the European Union, a prime minister, who traveled to Moscow on his own. This is almost 2 years ago. He had no mandate. He went there. He achieved nothing. And the week after, we saw the heaviest attacks on civil infrastructure, on private homes, on hospitals we had ever seen until this time. So if it makes sense to talk, we are willing to talk. But as you can see with the American side, Russia is not yet willing to talk seriously. And my personal guess is, this is my personal view, that this war will only end when Russia is at least economically, potentially militarily exhausted. We are approaching this time, but we are approaching this time. And I said that in my speech, that we did a lot to achieve that, but we are not yet there. Russia has to give up this terrible war against Ukraine. And we have to do everything what is needed to bring them to the point where they see no further advantages for them to continue this terrible war. We are not yet there, but look, this war is now lasting longer than the Second World War. It's terrible. Russia has it in its hand to stop it. But we have it in our hand, and this is America and Europe and Ukraine together, to bring them to this point, to stop it. And we have to do everything what is possible in our hands to do that. Militarily, economically, politically, diplomatically, whatever. And if it makes sense to talk, we are ready to talk. But they have to concede that they are really willing to talk about a ceasefire and then about a peace plan.
Thank you. We have time for one or two questions from the audience. Who will pose the first question? Please, where's the microphone? Microphone. Gentleman in the second row. Please be kind enough to identify yourself.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I'm the President of Montenegro. Dear Chancellor, I do want to ask you, what do you think, what is in your opinion the baseline scenario about the dynamics of the EU accession? You know that Montenegro is one of 10 candidate countries that are currently interested to join the club. And do you believe that also the enlargement of the Union is another part of making Europe more competitive on the world stage? Thank you very much.
Definitely, the answer is yes. And Ursula von der Leyen and myself, we are completely agreeing on that. We have promised the accession to become member of the European Union to many countries, especially in your region. And we had our meeting in December with the West Balkan states and the European Council in Brussels. And frankly, I'm feeling more and more uncomfortable with our approach to your countries. We have to reopen a new strategy, how to bring these countries closer to the European Union. I don't want to lose you. You are part of the European continent, and therefore you are potentially part of the European Union. And I know that this is a consensus. There is an elephant in the room. Everybody knows that here in this room, who is against it. But we have to overcome that. This is, until now, it's unanimous vote in the European Council to open the next chapter. But we have to overcome that. And the latest after the elections, which will take in April, hopefully we will be able to open the next chapters and to bring you closer and closer to the European Union at the very end as members.
Chancellor Merz, thank you so much. I think you succeeded in setting the tone for the 62nd Munich Security Conference. Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause.
And that was the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz delivering the opening speech at the Munich Security Conference. There's a lot to unpack there. Let me go to you, Matthew Moore, here at the big table with me. He said, he quoted someone as saying that Europe was coming out of this very long vacation from, what, politics or responsibility, right? Did he lay out, in your opinion, a plan to take on more responsibility?
I think so. I think that this was a remarkable speech in the sense that he conceded that a lot of the consensus since the Second World War, it was over. He said the rules-based world order as we know it is over. He said that the United States had appeared potentially to have squandered its role as the leader of the post-war era. He said that great power politics, that this new era of great power politics had the potential to end up in a very dangerous game, not just for smaller countries and middle powers like Germany, but also great powers. His answer, 4 points for renewal, essentially. One of them is about military power. He conceded it's an uncomfortable question for many. Germany to have the biggest conventional army again in Europe, which is one of the pledges.
And Matthew, you cover a lot of domestic policy, but also military policy. He said he wants to make the German military the strongest conventional weapons army in Europe. That's a lot of wishful thinking there, right? When you compare to what it is right now. Yes,
look, it's a process. He said we're on the way. Now, just to give you, Brent, an idea of what that means is, let's look at the budget of the German army in the year 2021, before Russia invaded Ukraine. It was 46 billion euros. In the year 2026, it is 83 billion euros.
Almost double.
But, and that doesn't include 25 billion euros additional cash that the Bundeswehr has to buy new equipment this year. So in all, 108 billion euros. You'll remember last year, Friedrich Merz passed a massive spending reform that allowed basically the government to spend unlimited amounts on defence and the security services. And we're seeing that. It's taking time. There's a lot that needs to be done procuring. You need to recruit new soldiers, but we're seeing the numbers are going up.
And this is what Donald Trump has been calling for now for almost a decade, right? I mean, Donald Trump was everywhere in this speech, wasn't he? He's revealed the dependencies that Europe has on the U.S. He's also, though, accelerated the attempt to reduce those dependencies. I mean, this was a speech all about the impact of Donald Trump, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Although the name
came up a couple of times.
The administration, Washington, he talked about. He talked certainly about J.D. Vance, because J.D. Vance gave a speech last year that described this growing chasm between the European partners and the United States. He said that does exist. Now, what was the solution? The solution is for Europe to do more militarily, to take a bigger role on within NATO, the alliance, which he said was the strongest alliance ever. He said there is a positive future. Friedrich Merz also talked about the fact that European Union needs to start to network more with other middle powers around the world, and that it's about partnerships.
Let me pull in now our chief political editor, Michaela Kufner. She is in Munich for us. Michaela, let me get your read on this speech. I mean, I've already been reading some commentators saying that he just gave the speech of his political career.
Well, we'll leave that to the history books. He still has quite a bit left in his tenure. It's not even a year yet. But clearly, the gloves are off in these transatlantic relationships. And he gave a very blunt analysis of the situation the United States is in, which sounds like an insult. He said that the United States' role as world power was already being questioned and that might already be lost. And then later on in this speech, he warned the United States that they too will find that you can be big, you know, you can be strong, but they're not strong enough to completely dominate this world order. And then he threw a hint at the Pentagon, which was clearly coming to this conclusion, which is also why there's still so much support for NATO, that Europe's security is also American security. So this absolutely is a slap in the face, particularly in the logic that Donald Trump sees the world and his world in particular. And at the same time, he was saying, look, we know that we are dependent. We know we brought ourselves into this situation of dependency on the United States. We want to have you as a partner, but we're working towards becoming a lot less dependent on the United States. And by the way, there's a new world order shaping anyway. So this is a very self-confident, almost outrageously sober analysis that is delivered to those US senators who were sitting in the room there. And notably, when it came to European strength, there was quite a bit of applause in the room as well. At the same time, he said he doesn't believe in that kind of power politics in Europe. Germany has learned its lessons, having started 2 world wars. He didn't mention that in such specifics, but that's the historic lesson, that German strength is European strength and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is designed. The message sounds like it's designed for Donald Trump. Basically, the chancellor telling Washington or telling the White House, size does not always matter. You need us really almost as much as we need you. I mean, that's a language. I mean,
not as much though.
Well, who needs more whom there, though?
But you can't go it alone.
No, you can't go it alone. That's right. But that's a language that Donald Trump will understand. I wonder if it's going to make the U.S. president even more irate. I mean, because there was also a compliment in this speech. You know, Europe is doing what Donald Trump has been calling for a long time now. It is spending more on its own defense. That has to make Washington feel somewhat happy or satisfied.
Well, that would presume that Donald Trump really cares that terribly much what the Europeans think about. And I'm not that sure whether that really is necessarily his audience, bearing in mind that it's the US Secretary Rubio who will be speaking here at this conference. That's the level that the US chose, not like Vice President Vance last year, it's Rubio. And these two men are seen as potentially the men who could become candidates in the next elections for the Republicans, as the US are going into a midterms year. So this is a message into the future, and it's basically saying, we know we can't live without you. We know we depend on you. We still kind of love you, but you broke up with us first.
Yeah.
It certainly it has ended the period where the Europeans were desperately trying to remain friends under the same terms. Clearly, the terms have changed, and the Europeans, the German Chancellor, want to also determine some of those terms.
Yeah, it's complicated, as they say today. This is definitely a 21st century relationship that we're talking about here. Let me ask you, Michaela, to look into your crystal ball, because we know that tomorrow, the U.S. Secretary of State, he's going to deliver his address. Are you expecting, should we be bracing for a hard response to what we heard today from the German Chancellor?
This is an interesting one. I'm sure that the White House was listening, and I'm sure that Marco Rubio won't be delivering necessarily his own response. He's seen as someone who is really moderate, one of the adults in the room in the U.S. administration one can absolutely work with. That's what I'm hearing. But he will certainly have to respond in one shape or form to this. Whether this will be a tough pushback, unclear, but one thing's for sure, everybody here is braced for that. Nobody's going to ever be as shocked and surprised as people were after that Vance speech last year, which was basically an interference into the inner workings of Europe's democracy, basically telling Europeans that they should be voting for right-wing parties. So nothing can shock the Europeans anymore after that crisis over Greenland. The German Chancellor went off script because we did get an advance rough copy to highlight that he will stand in solidarity with the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. So that's quite notably, and it certainly is a very self-confident message. I doubt that Marco Rubio will try and put the Europeans in their place. In the background, we're already seeing market dynamics at work, economic dynamics, and I think it's really notable that these are pushing ever further into the forefront as the fallout from the Trump administration so far for the Europeans is becoming more and more also an economic one. They've pretty much resigned themselves that they are home alone with Ukraine in that particular crisis.
Yeah, I mean, Michaela brings up a good point, doesn't she? I mean, when you talk about the economic interest here, many people say that Trump, lessened his stance on Greenland because of the U.S. bond market that could have tanked. He's afraid that allies will start dumping dollars onto the world system, and that would lead the dollar to crash. I mean, Michaela's right. I mean, we're too interconnected to ignore it, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories about why exactly Trump backtracked. What was interesting is Merz could have given a different speech today. He could have given a speech where he said, it's really important that we continue that we don't give up on this transatlantic alliance. We really need you, and could have flattered Trump and the US administration. He didn't do that. He was quite critical, as Michaela said. He was quite a self-confident address today. He was critical, really quite critical of the US, and delivered some home truths about the rise of China in shaping this new global order. What I thought was interesting, he got a number of, maybe 2 or 3 standing ovations today. One of them was when he rejected US MAGA culture wars.
Yeah, he said it's not ours, right?
And he said it's not ours, and he said that free speech is protected here in Germany, and it has certain limits when it comes to inciting hatred. And he also then said, we believe in free trade and not protectionism, and that got the applause, because that is one of the issues which is damaging to the United States. It's damaging to trade and to partnership there. So I thought that was really interesting. I think he has potentially written a speech for the history books.
Okay. Matthew, good to have you here at the table. Appreciate your analysis. Michaela there in Munich. Michaela, good to have you here on board as well. And thank you for joining us. Live streaming, watching on TV, wherever you are in the world. We appreciate your company. You've been watching DW News special coverage of the Munich Security Conference, and our coverage will continue throughout the weekend. I'll be back at the top of the hour with more world news. I hope to see you then.
An increasingly divided world unite? Far too often, it's only the headlines that count, and not the full story. We all see things from a different perspective. We may argue or disagree, but if we listen, speak, and learn from one another, on the basis of facts and unbiased information, anything is possible. Only together can we find solutions to the challenges of our time. Because together, we see.
A child bride who became a mother when she was just a teenager.
I'm an Afghan woman. When I was 14, I got married. I had a son in age of 15.
After fleeing her abusive husband, she found a new life in Norway.
My nose is broken because of his family. He broke my nose. I fled to Norway in 2011. Right now I'm working with fitness modeling and competing in World Championship.
She is Roya Karimi, a world champion bodybuilder and a fearless voice for Afghan women and their rights. In the quiet suburbs of Oslo, Roya Karimi lives a life she could never have imagined in Afghanistan. Free and without judgment.
My life in Afghanistan was totally different. All my lifestyle and the clothing, everything was different. As an Afghan girl, I had to cover myself. I couldn't go to school. I didn't have any freedom like I have today.
Born into a conservative household in the Afghan city of Herat, Roya's parents forced her into marriage when she was only 14. She was married to a man far older than her.
I didn't get that respect and honor to be part of their family. They were very violently against each other and me too.
After the wedding, she was subjected to domestic violence and forced to stay inside the house she shared with her husband's family. She had no control over her body, her choices, or her destiny.
My nose is broken because of his family. He broke my nose. It was a sad and boring life. I didn't have any right to have any opinion about life. It was like a prison, honestly.
In 2011, when she was 17, Roya made a bold decision. With her child in her arms, she left everything behind and fled Afghanistan, embarking on a dangerous journey to reach Europe in search of a free life.
My mom planned the whole of journey through Iran, Turkey, Greece, and the rest of the journey until Norway. After I came to Norway, after everything was calmed and I finally had a place to live, to settle, the pain I carry from Afghanistan to work out, to take care of my little child.
Roya had left school after getting married. For thousands of Afghan girls, education remains a dream, even today. But everything changed when she arrived in Norway. Roya enrolled at a nursing school and discovered new purpose in her life.
I was very excited, but it was very difficult working with